All right, everyone. It's episode 5 of Wake Up Call, and I'm joined by Carey Wedler, is the way that we say your last name, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And
correct.
she makes these awesome videos if you guys haven't seen them. They're short format and she gets straight to the point. She's literally the most logical woman when it comes to politics on the internet.
Election news. No one is coming to save you. Not him or her. Not even him. Not her. And definitely not him or him. Despite the rhetoric, platitudes, and grandstanding of power chasers, if any of these people genuinely intended to save you or even could, they'd already be dead. But why do so many people feel they need a politician to save them in the first place? Because things are so bad. But how did they get so bad? People have been voting for politicians to save them for generations, and for lesser evils almost as long. And after all that, we got this dumpster fire. How are politicians going to save you from the messes they created? Yep, that includes this guy too. Despite the years of programming we all received that voting is our voice and makes us free, the opposite is true. We're indoctrinated to believe it's the most effective way to make a change, usually to fix problems the government created. And in participating, we choose masters for others and call it representation. We're conditioned to believe we can't do it ourselves and have to outsource it to others who know better than us. And that doing so is, quote, taking action, which has resulted in an ever-encroaching imperial police surveillance state that impoverishes and insults the people it, quote, represents and serves. Some people think acknowledging this means I'd rather do nothing. But pointing out the illegitimacy of the system is not apathetic or defeatist. It's required to start pulling ourselves out of this hellhole and start taking responsibility for ourselves, not outsourcing it to documented criminals and megalomaniacs who seek authority over others. The real defeatism and apathy is tolerating the meager options the system gives you and playing along with their game. And the more you fixate on politics and what political puppet takes the throne, the less energy you have to actually do something. It's on you to take care of your health and well-being.
I love her stance, and I love that she shares sort of a similar political journey as me. She voted for Obama, and then I think when the COVID stuff happened, people probably pinned her in the more conservative space, even though she's not really. And now she's coming out and saying, we need to move towards an anarchist society, something similar to it. And I love that. So here she is.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, so tell us about your political journey. I know I just kind of went over it roughly, but how did you end up where you are now and doing what you're doing?
Yeah, so I was raised very progressive, liberal. I'm from Los Angeles, so that's the climate here, and that's what I was. I loved Barack Obama. We're not talking like, oh, well, I don't like him or I like him better than the other candidate. I'm talking like top tier cult member of like Obama's going to save us and he's our savior. Well, literally savior. That's what save us means. But I was very enthusiastic, and like many voters, I voted for him. He won. I was like, my job's done. Okay, cool. He's going to fix it all. And he did not fix it all. And I had to reconcile it because I always considered myself politically aware and very informed and, engaged in what was going on. And as with many voters, when the guy I liked got into power, I disconnected. I was like, well, it's fine now. I don't have to worry about it. And of course, all the horrible things kept happening. He started new wars. He was the drone king. He had appointed bankers to his cabinet. And when I started paying attention, it was 2011. I saw what he had done, and it was very much inconsistent with the reasons I had voted for him. And so that was the first step for me, was going, wait, this person who promised things is not keeping his promises? Who could have thought that a politician might not do what he said he was going to do? And I found Ron Paul, and he was he really taught me more about the philosophy of liberty. Like, I had gone from just like, well, this is wrong and war is bad and politicians are corrupt, to giving me a framework for why liberty works and for why freedom is really ideal and preferable to authoritarianism of any kind. And then Ron Paul, of course, got blacked out by the media. I don't know who remembers 2012, but I was still very much like, I'm going to vote and Ron Paul is going to fix it. And then I learned very quickly that people like Ron Paul do not get into real positions of power. And there's a good reason for that, because they might actually threaten it. You look at the rhetoric of like Bernie Sanders or something, and he got slammed and blacked out just for rhetoric, because if you look at his record, he's really not that consistent, but he identifies the problem well. And that even was not okay. You're not allowed to even rhetorically identify the problem. So then I started to become more skeptical of the system itself. I started reading more anarchist philosophy. And that was it. It was like, once I saw that Ron Paul couldn't win and people like him were not going to have influence in government, that was it. And ever since then, it all came for me from a place of peace. like when I was a liberal, even when I was a progressive, I'm interchanging those terms, and I know people on the left will be very angry at me, but I'm a former leftist, whatever. I'm trying my best. I never got into those intricacies, but even back then I was very anti-war. Like I grew up, I was 13 when 9/11 happened. So the older I got, things just kept getting worse and worse, and the wars. And I came from a left-wing background, so my family is very much opposed to the wars. But then that turned into more of a anti-violence, not just war. Okay, I oppose war because I oppose initiating violence, but what if there's violence tinged in every single action of government? What if the state is violence, literally? And the more I read about it, I couldn't debunk it. It's like, well, how does the government assert authority? Literally through violence. What do you call law enforcement? Law enforcement. The police enforce the laws. And how do they do it? They have weapons. And there's this exception for people in government where we believe, I hate the collective term, but for the sake of conversation and proving, or not proving, but articulating my point, we are conditioned to believe that certain people are allowed to use violence. That would be police officers, the military, people who work in government. And maybe it's not great, and maybe we don't like violence, but they're allowed to do it. And if they do it, there's less skepticism of it. There's a lot more willingness for people to say, well, the other person was a criminal. The other person did something wrong. Therefore, it's okay that this person harmed them physically, often killed them. And once I went down that road, there's no going back. I've tried over the years to convince myself otherwise, because I think it's important to question your own beliefs, and it hasn't happened. It could happen, but I don't see it happening. I don't think I'm going to just suddenly start believing it's okay to force your views on other people. But that's really the crux of my philosophy and what I try to talk about the most.
For sure. And I see a lot of people responding to you the same way, in that they're saying, how can an anarchist society work? Well, what do you do if there is no police force? And you get grilled with those questions.
Yeah.
And you answer them so well, but like, how do you deal with that and on an ongoing basis?
I think it's something, well, to be honest, I stopped reading comments a long time ago. Like, if you ever see me replying to a comment, it's because I accidentally hit the notification tab. Like, I don't check notifications. I accidentally saw, especially on Instagram, because it's just, I found that it was disrupting my peace so much. And it's I didn't feel this way when I started doing this work a very long time ago, but over the years, I've started to really see the connection between inner peace and outer peace. And the chaos we see outside, to me, in my experience, everything I've learned in my life, this is a reflection of inner chaos. And that goes for the people being ruled and the people ruling. I think everyone is dealing with some sort of dysregulation or disruption or inner discontent that then gets blasted out into the world because we don't want to face it. And so it's somebody else solve my problem, somebody else make my discomfort go away. So I try not to read those comments. That said, I think it's an important question. And I don't claim to be an authority on every single solution and how an anarchist society would work. But I do, like, I have a set of morals, and my morals say, well, you can't force people. It should be consensual. It should be voluntary. And ultimately, what I think is most powerful about this is most of our interactions are already anarchist. And the word has been demonized, but like most of our day-to-day life and the people we interact with, the people that we do business with, it's voluntary. And if we don't want to be in that relationship anymore, we can leave. And that's very much not the case with government. And so that's why I hammer it home so much. I think for the last maybe 5 years, that goes in every video. I'm trying to find a way to slip it into every video. And that's affected my views, honestly. Like, I don't get as much reach when I take the stronger stance and I go more philosophical, but I don't care. Like, that's what's true to me. And so that's what I have to say. And I'm just so grateful I even have a platform to say it after all these years. There's been censorship. Obviously everybody knows about the censorship, and I was personally censored, and all these years later, I can't bring myself to change what I have to say so I can get more reach or more views. And I've made peace with that. So to circle back to the original question of how do I deal with people asking all these questions, I think most things for me come back to being with myself and sitting with myself and cultivating an inner sanctuary away from all the chaos and violence of the world.
That's good, because then you're going to have the longevity and the energy to keep going,
Right.
because you can get burnt out from this crap really easily. So if that's your method to the madness, then then I could see how that works. It's interesting because all of these right-leaning people during COVID don't realize that they were actually anarchists when they were pushing back on the tyranny. Right. And now they're just going along with all of these other other things coming down the pipeline that are tyrannical, and you point that out as well, and like you said, then you lose part of your following because they just
Mhm.
don't want to hear it.
No, and I think like they can't hear it. They literally, it's like, even if they wanted to, they couldn't because the programming is so deep. And I don't want to speak like I have no programming wall of programming, and we're at different phases of breaking out, and there's different kinds of programming. So I don't want to speak like I like condescending to them, because we all have a point where we break out of it, or we start to break out of it. But it's very much, I think, especially in that crowd, there's such an identification with the idea of America. And the idea of America, in my opinion, my study of history, it's inextricably linked to government, because the entire foundation of American identity is the Constitution. Yes, it's the Revolution. I like the Revolution. I'm not a fan of the Constitution, even though I think it had good intentions. But when you have a strong sense of nationalism, and that nationalism is inherently tied to government, it's going to be really hard to see the pitfalls of it. Because the big thing I often hear is, well, if we just follow the Constitution, all we have to do is follow the Constitution. We, first of all, who's we? We, the what people? The people in government, the people who are vote, any of that. Like, if you actually break down, it's like gibberish to me.
Mhm.
But I find that it's really hard for people to break away from something they were conditioned into their whole lives. And I got it too. It's like you learn in public school that democracy is virtue, or for this particular demographic, it's the republic, because democracy is different. And, it's all government, it's all authority, it's all force. But for them, it's the republic. And you learn that you can vote people out, and you can get accountability, and there's checks and balances and this and that. And that is really not, that does not line up with history. When you look at the history of America and the history of the Constitution and how it was followed or not followed, a lot of the time, it kind of falls apart. But I think it's very difficult for people to question something that's so deeply interwoven with their identity. And it was for me too. And it's a long process. I don't think, I mean, some people just know from the time they walk into public school and they're like, this is all me. No, what? I'm not following your rules. That wasn't me. I was
Yeah.
very much a follower. I got a sense of worth and value from like doing it as what I was told and getting a star on my little chart. And, so it's been a long, long, long process for me. So I don't want to speak like I know better than anyone. I'm just at a different part of my journey, and maybe that's not everybody else's journey. And I'm open to the fact that I'm wrong, but I think it's a little less harmful for me to be wrong, because I'm not advocating violence against anyone. When you're advocating state action and government action, you're inherently saying that you believe that through government agents, you have a right to inflict force and violence on people. And it's really hard to see because we're not taught that in all of our public school civics education. But it's tough to watch. It's hard to see people get it like so clearly. Like during COVID, there was this such disobedience in the air. And now I saw this clip of Tucker Carlson before the election talking about how America needs its daddy to come home and punish America because they've been bad. And if you don't punish them, and the crowd's like, yeah, yeah, like that's the way. And I'm like, oh no, like
Yeah.
this
I
is
know.
not looking good.
I've really thought there for a while that, between 2020 and 2022, I was like, we're on the right path. There's a lot of
Right.
people. And then around 2022 into this year, I was like, it's actually getting smaller and smaller and
Yeah.
smaller, but it
Yeah.
really only takes a small number of people
Mhm.
to to make real change. So,
Yeah.
and you're one of those people. For
Oh, thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, definitely. Um, so how do you feel about Trump getting into office? Do you think that that was a long-term plan, like that he was made out to be so hated in 2016 and 2020,
Yeah.
and now in 2024, it seems like the mainstream alternative is
Yeah.
really embracing him. And do you think that that was the long-term plan, 8 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, I think that if there is, I mean, who makes the plan? Hard to say. Shadowy figures, everybody has a different take. But like, let's say there are these shadowy authorities who are making the plans. I think that's totally possible. And that's just intuitive. Like, I can't say that with any indication of like, I know this for certain. However, if you look at his policies when the first time he was in office, he was not threatening to the swamp. And if you look at the things that the media was enraged about, to me, they were not substantive. It was very much, and I reference this a lot, but it's because it's such a great example to me. There was I think it was 2018 or 19, and there was the NDAA getting passed, the National Defense Authorization Act. And there was a big drama because Donald Trump was balking about signing it because it was named after John McCain or something. Like that was the big drama, and CNN covered it. And Jake Tapper, who used to like, he once questioned the Obama administration about Obama's kill list of killing American citizens without trial. So I used to think he was cool. When I first started my work, I was like, whoa, this guy's really speaking truth to power. During the Trump administration, he had since then gone to CNN. He was an anchor for CNN, and he was talking about how offensive it was that Donald Trump did not thank John McCain for his service. Like, what? And forget the fact that media is praising Trump for bombing Syria when he bombed Syria. There was such support for that. And as far as I know, they had very little to say about how much he had filled the swamp. You know, they reported on, well, he appointed defense contractors and whatnot, but this was not an ongoing conversation, nor was it for Biden. But I never saw any, I don't want to say no substantive criticism, because there are plenty of things to criticize Trump about, but in terms of the things that I think are systemic, no, they didn't care. That was not their concern. They weren't really interested in that. So I think it's interesting now because right up until the election, it was still Trump is literally Hitler. We're going to lose our democracy. Civilization is at stake. And then the next day you got like a CNN anchor. I think it was Don Lemon. He's like, well, we lost. That's democracy. Man, this is what it is. Come back in 4 years and we'll win. What? Is that like, so what you're naming, it's like this strange acquiescence. Like it does feel a bit theatrical. Like the way that it just, boom, it shifts. Okay, this is, and again, how do we really know? Like, I'm not in CNN editorial meetings where they may or may not be also meeting with like a CIA agent or something, you know, but like something just does not feel authentic about it. And again, I'm saying feel because I don't know. But to me, just watching the circus and I think to me, what is most frustrating, and if there is a plot, it's for this end, is that all of these people who were really questioning the system and really starting, I don't know how deep they were going, but people that were really fundamentally questioning the system during COVID have now been roped back into the system. Because whatever you say, Donald Trump's not a politician. Donald Trump is anti-establishment. He's a politician. He literally served in political office as president. He was involved in politics before funding Democrats. Like, this is not an apolitical person who just loves his country so much that he's sacrificing himself to have power. He loves power. That's any politician loves power, and he is no different. And if you look at the appointments this time around, there's a couple maybe improvements. They seem like improvements, but I know your face says it all. I'm trying to connect with the mindset here. Like, I want to empathize with why people think this is good. But first of all, like, the good people are very big government, and are they good? I think that's up for debate and a whole other conversation. But then you look at the foreign policy team he's put together, and it is as swampy as it could possibly be. And to come back to like, well, people, they can't hear it, they can't face it, they can't see it. It's some brilliant Trump plan to trick the establishment and actually take them out of power by appointing them to power. It's, you know, like the hoops you have to jump through to believe that a politician cares about you are staggering, and it is very hard to watch. But I am hoping, my hope is that there are enough people who are looking at this and going, wait, this is not what I voted for. I actually gathered a bunch of tweets for my last video of people just being like, I didn't vote for this. What? This is not what I want. So I'm hoping there's at least some people who take that as a jumping off point to really, you know, go down the road that we've gone down and questioning things more deeply.
Do you think that it's going to be significant enough? Do you think it's going to be a small amount of people, or do you think that there's going to be enough people where it's like, we told you so, and they actually admit to it? I mean, because it seems like, you know, during COVID, it was the left that didn't want to admit that it was all BS, and now the right, they're saying a lot of people are saying we didn't sign up for this, we didn't agree to this, but actually if they did their homework, they would have seen what was coming. And so, I mean, do you think that there's going to be a significant amount of people who admit that they were wrong?
I hope so. I've been doing this a long time, and I think I'm more optimistic than is realistic. But I'm also looking at like a much longer term trajectory, and, you know, like probably long after I'm dead and we're all gone. I think it's looking really good. For right now, I think it's going to depend on what happens, because my guess is that Donald Trump will do several things that are enough crumbs for his base that they can cling to hope, and like just enough to ignore all of the horrible things that happen. And this is just speculation, so we'll see, because if I'm wrong, cool. Like it might hurt my ego, but like if Donald Trump really is the savior and he's going to make everything better, which I hate that entire mentality that somebody else is going to fix it for you. But let's say he is, and things actually get better. I'm still going to, air my issues as an anarchist and talk about why I think that's superior, but I will own it if Trump turns out to be all he's promised. And I mean, come on, I don't see that happening, but I will. And I'll eat my words and I'll own it. But I just, given his past record, the things he's promising to do now, the rhetoric he's already put out there, which granted, you can't trust his rhetoric. He'd go either way. It's funny, actually, I'm going to go off on a side tangent, but I was hiking with my dog on election day and we were walking down the trail and there's this guy on a phone call, very LA, just like hiking on a phone call, dude, in nature. But like he's on a call and he's talking to, I think obviously he's talking to somebody, but he was talking about some woman he knew who was so horrified at Donald Trump maybe winning. And I hear this guy and he's just like, Donald Trump says a lot of stuff. He doesn't always follow through on it. Like, chill out. It's not that bad. And this is like an LA, probably liberal, just going like, oh my God, chill out. Like we can't assume he's going to do everything he says, which yes, that's kind of reassuring, but it's also like, wait, hold on. There are people in power where it's like, you can't even trust if what they're saying is real. You have to just assume that maybe like they have some secret game they're playing. And maybe some people are comforted by that. The Q people, the people who think that Daddy Trump is going to make it all better. And we don't have to think about it. We don't have to. And I know that they think they're thinking about it, but I would argue they are absolutely not thinking about it at all. They're just, replaying loops of propaganda in their heads. That is my take. I'll talk about it more. And I've written about it and I've made videos about it, but I'm hoping. See, that's the thing is it's like, well, the worse it gets, the more people question it, but I don't want it to get worse. So it's kind of like, what do I want here?
The double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Well, the number one thing I think the right is overlooking with Trump is that they see nationalism totally separate from the one world government technocratic agenda, when actually if you're studying Trump's actions, not his words, his actions, they're synonymous. It looks like they're synonymous. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, so I studied history in college, and something that really, this is back when I was a progressive, but I took a class, this is so obscure, but I took a class on 19th century Eastern and Central European history. And it was very much about nationalism, because there were all of these countries in that region who had been colonized, imperialized. It was the Russian Empire. It was the Habsburg Empire. It was the Ottoman Empire. And they were constantly getting tossed between these different regimes, and they didn't have autonomy. So back then, and in this kind of instance, the nationalism really was a counter to this broader global power that was encroaching into their homeland and into their lives. And so nationalism actually was very helpful in casting off government. But then what happened? The nationalist factions then became the oppressors. So I think that's what's happening here. Is okay, maybe nationalism is a block against globalism. Maybe. To me, that's a very big maybe, because when you look at the actual power structures, it's just a tier down. You have globalism, you have nationalism, you have the more state level, the local level. It's all the same thing to me. It's all government. So maybe if there were an authentic sense of nationalism that could really push back against this world government, maybe. But then what would happen? Well, we see what's happening, because so much of this authoritarianism in America is rooted in nationalism, especially after 9/11, the patriotism, but maybe not even especially, because it's been this way for so long. Like we were talking about this identification with America, and then as a result, government. But especially when you look at the people Trump's appointing, the Elon Musk faction of all like this technocracy, this does not seem like it's gonna go well. And yeah, go ahead.
No, it doesn't. And how do you feel about, I mean, I've been saying it's not MAGA anymore, it's MIGA. And I know you've been pretty critical of Israel, but you have an interesting story because you're part Jewish, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you really can see the bigger picture. And I think it's so important for people like you who have that background come out and say, hey, this is a combination of church and state. Like this is not just because somebody's critical of Israel doesn't mean that they hate Jews. So and you're a perfect example of that. So how do you feel about Trump really kind of prioritizing Israel first?
Yeah, well, you know what's funny is that we're talking about like, well, you can't believe anything Trump says on
Yeah,
Israel. It seems like you can. Like he
yeah.
promised that Israel was going to be a top priority in his administration, and he's doing it. So while I think it's absolutely egregious, like I'll give him that. He's doing what he said he was going to do, but it's hard to watch. Well, what's so interesting too is there's this nationalism, and then the same people who are so MAGA are like, yeah, Israel first. We got to take care of Israel. And I think it's like a roundabout way of like, well, for America to be protected, we have to protect Israel because, something about the Middle East and, hating all those other countries in the Middle East, and they're the real threat and we have to protect Israel. But to me, it seems like such a result of an active campaign. And I don't want to speak on things I don't know about, because I don't know too much about the history of Israeli influence on American politics. I know the present. I know, about AIPAC, obviously. I know how much influence they have. I don't know when that began, though. And so I don't want to speak too much. But it's hard to watch, I think, because this could escalate like very badly. And it hasn't so far. I don't want to be an alarmist. I don't want to be sensationalist. I cannot tell you how many times I've been on Twitter in the last year. It's like World War III. It's happening now. Like, okay, but it's not. I mean, it might be the build up to it, but it's not right now. So I don't want to sensationalize. But I think it's just, to be honest, I don't understand why. Why is there such such devoted relationship between Israel and America? And I would like to be educated on that. So if somebody could tell me the origin of this, I don't know. But I just don't get why people are willing to they're so willing to sacrifice so much for this country, Israel. But maybe it's because I know there is a big evangelical affinity and it factors into the Bible story, right? Like I think that's a big part of why there's such evangelical support.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just to bring it back to the church and state thing, because I think it's so important to touch on. I think Israel, I don't know how much just, and I know social media is like not necessarily real, but if you look at the Zionism and you look at the people who support Israel, the Jews who support Israel, to me, it's heartbreaking because what Israel has successfully done is it's tied itself, it's linked itself as inextricable from Jews. Like it's the same thing. Israel and Judaism are the same thing. And in doing that, and we talked about this at the beginning with American nationalism, they're taking like a core part of someone's identity and they're fusing it to the state. And it's disturbing and sad to watch. And I'm so glad I wasn't raised this way. My mother, who is Jewish, was always critical of Israel. It was never like, I'm so grateful. And maybe I would have gotten there on my own, but I'm glad that I had that foundation of like, no, you don't just support this government because they say they're Jewish. But the way that people latch on to that, it's like a trauma bond, because what they do is they say, look at your family history, because most Jews have a family history of some kind of persecution. Mine certainly does. Every Jew I went to high school with, absolutely. And so they take this trauma, this intergenerational trauma that has been handed down, handed down for generation after generation after generation. And it's ingrained in you. It's like, oh, my family suffered. My family was persecuted. Here's this government that says they're going to fix it for us, that they're going to protect us. Of course, most people are going to support that. It's not, and there's a lot of like, there's so much anti-Semitism to the point where it's like, look, I get disliking Israel, but holy crap, like this is like, it's weird because I'm white, I'm pretty much white. My dad's lineage is like German and English. My last name is very German, but it's weird to like be on social media and see people just hating you. And I'm not talking Israel, I'm talking Jews.
Yes.
Not even Jews who support Israel, just Jews.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, dude, my grandpa was like a shoe salesman. He was not running the world, I assure you. He was poor. My family was poor. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
That was a side tangent, but I do think it's worth discussing because it's such a representation of the power of statism and the power of identity getting locked into statism. And it's like a double whammy because it has that religion aspect.
It reminds me a little bit of what happened to the LGBTQ community. Like, I had when I was living in LA, I had a group of gay friends, and we had this conversation one day about how, like, since when do the trans people get like completely put in that category? Like it's all one.
Right.
They're separate categories. It's
Yeah.
not a blanket thing, and you're basically putting people in a box. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's the over identification of labels again.
Yeah.
It's not I am an individual with unlimited consciousness that I
Yeah.
can tap into.
Right.
It's let's put more labels on so we can all
Yeah.
disagree and hate one another because of these
Yeah.
labels.
Yeah.
So, um, so how do you think we can break the cycle of voting for the lesser of two evils? Because even there's a lot of people who will watch this, they'll sit and agree with us, but they still
Mhm.
fall into the well, what else are we gonna do?
Right.
What do you say to that?
So the first thing I say to that, which is I had so much fun writing this. I started a Substack back in October, and something that one of the first articles I wrote, which was it was for the election, was the history of the lesser evil argument, because this is everyone's go-to argument. And this is the pragmatic thing to do. I'm like, okay, well, when did this start? So I went through old magazine and newspaper, I think it was just newspaper archives. And I was searching all these different publications for the use of the term lesser evil or the least of two evils or a choice of evils. This has been going on since the 1800s, like early 1800s. Thomas Jefferson was considered a lesser evil to Aaron Burr. And like he very well might have been. I'm not saying that it's never true. Like maybe there is one politician who's less evil than another. But for over 200 years, this has been the prevailing argument. Like I couldn't not include all the quotes in the argument. My document is it's too long to count. It's like 10,000 words of quotes from newspapers of like, well, this is the pragmatism. You have to pick one. Like, I don't like this guy either, but you gotta pick him or it's gonna be way worse if you pick the other guy. And it's like, okay, so if for 200 years this has not worked and it's resulted in you having the exact same choice of evils, well, that's not pragmatic. That's just repeating cycles. However, I understand the attachment to voting. People really feel like this is their only source of agency, which to me is one of the biggest problems because people think the only way to make a change or to do something is to vote. Actually, there's a sign up near the freeway near where I live, and it says, do something, vote. I'm like, what? That's not doing anything. What are you talking about? You're tapping a screen. Like so I think that really that is the mentality that needs to be addressed. But more so than that, and this has been something that maybe the last 5 years has taken a much bigger part of my life and I put everything through this lens of like, we got to work on ourselves, man. Because this constant looking outside yourself, this lack of agency, this belief that somebody else has to do it for you, I think is so fundamental to why we have so many of these problems because everybody just gives their power away to like known criminals and authoritarians, and not all of them. There's maybe a few politicians who really try their best, but overwhelmingly, you could, I mean, it's funny too, because you read what people were saying about politics 200 years ago, 100 years ago, same thing. They're all corrupt. Government's an evil, but it's a necessary one. Like this is the same recycled talking points and what changes. And that's why I love history because you get such insight into how we got to where we are. And reading these newspapers, I'm like, oh my God, of course. People have been saying this since the beginning. And it's an old term, the lesser evil term. But in American politics, it seems to have started. I think it was Jefferson first. Then I couldn't find any for a couple elections. And then with, I think Monroe or Madison, um, election after election. I did not go a single presidential election. I went all the way up to the end of the archives in the 60s, did not find a single election without somebody arguing about voting for lesser evils and how that was the way to go. So just to bring it back, like it's just so incessant. And it's like, well, what's different this time? And there's always a reason it's different. Now it's Trump because Trump is anti-establishment and somebody tried to kill him. So therefore we know that he's a real threat to the deep state, which is just, that goes off the rails for me because it's just, what do I want to believe? What do I want to be true? Okay, that's what's true with very little evidence and very little actual, like nothing concrete to really go on because what is concrete suggests otherwise, to me at least.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's that these people haven't done the inner work and
Yeah.
Somebody like you clearly has, and you don't really speak on that often. It's you're pretty logical and practical in your message, but you've clearly done the inner work. So, what has your journey been to get to the point where you can see all of this clearly? I mean, what led you to this point?
Well, it was definitely like from a logical and rational standpoint, it was the wisdom of others. It was studying history. And what's cool about studying history was that when I studied it, I was very much a liberal. And I soaked in all the information. And then when I started questioning everything, I still had this full history education and I saw it all in a new light. I'm like, wait a minute. hold on. It's almost always the government. How did I not see this before? Like all of my history, if there's one takeaway, it's the government freaking sucks. And they're responsible for so much suffering and abuse and violence. And when I say they, it's the individuals in government. I don't know if you've read much Larkin Rose, but I highly recommend to anyone who hasn't. But he talks about how like government isn't real. There's just people calling themselves government. This is not a real thing. Where is the government? It's not the building of government. Anyway, that's a whole side tangent, but I love history for that reason. And then it was reading like Lysander Spooner and Rothbard. And then what I had to do, because I was doing this work and I was very burned out and it wasn't just about the work. We all have trauma we have to work through and our own personal suffering. But I realized something had to change because I was so stressed out and I was so anxious and I was so angry. I was just like, if you watch my older videos, you can see it in my face. It's just kind of like this gnarled twisting, and there's such a reactivity around it. And so my first step was yoga. That was, actually pretty early on. And I love yoga. I still yoga. I still do it, but that did not solve my inner suffering. It did for a little bit. I was like, oh, this is it. I'm good now. And then all of a sudden it creeps back in, and there was meditation. And so yoga and meditation are very much a part of my life, but it took some deeper inquiry, like some deeper spiritual work and inner child work, like sitting with the wounded parts of self that you don't realize are actually running the show. But then like you snap at somebody and you're like, wait a minute, hold on. That was not a proportionate reaction to what they did to offend me. Like, what's going on here? Who is showing up here? Who is speaking through me right now and having these big feelings? So my inner child work has been really big. And then I can't not talk about this because it's changed my life so much. But this year I started doing what's called a brain rewiring program. I don't know if you're familiar with it, like a neuroplasticity based. Basically, I do 3 rounds of rewiring a day. And also it's kind of like a day or moment to moment practice of mindfulness and catching like what programs are running in my brain right now.
Yeah.
Like what negativity bias, what beliefs about myself. And I started for some kind of like chronic autoimmune symptoms that nobody could solve, of course. And I didn't have autoimmune markers, at least not a few years ago. My blood work was normal, but something was very much not working correctly. Like you wouldn't guess it, but I'm out exercising, I'm out doing all these things, but I could tell something was off. And I found this program that basically it helps you rewire a glitched out fight or flight response. So the premise is that when we get caught in fight or flight, it could be for any reason. It could be trauma. It could be some physical illness, but the limbic system, which regulates fight or flight in the brain, can get glitched out and overactive, and then things really start to go wrong. Because if you're in fight or flight, then all of your body's normal functioning gets deprioritized and turned down, and it's constantly like reacting and surviving. And and I lived like that honestly like my whole life. I didn't realize that this was most of my life. So doing this program, it's not only helped me heal, like I'm getting better and I've seen so much improvement in my health, but what it's really shown me is how many people are caught in this and how big of a factor this is. Because I knew like, yes, people are chaotic and they're suffering and they're traumatized and they're not addressing their wounds and they're, all of that. But then I started realizing like, oh, wait, yes, it's a consciousness thing, but it could be a physical thing too. The way that this chronic stress affects the brain and literally atrophies the parts of the brain that are responsible for critical thinking. Like I look around, I'm like, oh my God, okay, chronic disease. And yes, a lot of it has to do with the food supply and the pharmaceuticals and the soil and the air and like all the toxins. Obviously, they're everywhere. But when I look back on it, I don't think I would have gotten sick if it hadn't been for the stress that was just constantly weakening my body and taking me out of balance. And I think that this is so essential for people to not only to be aware of, but to do something about. And this is very empowering. You do it yourself. You don't have a doctor do it for you. You don't have a holistic nutritionist do it for you. This is all you. And it's very empowering. It's not like digging into trauma. You're not reliving trauma. You're just reassociating things in your brain so your brain can get back to normal and start functioning properly and not be in constant panic, which I think that most people, so for example, when you go on social media, my heart starts to beat faster. I can feel it. My body grips up. And I think that that's probably true for most people, but we're so disconnected from our bodies, we don't even notice. Like it took me years to even notice of like, ooh, this doesn't feel good. I don't like this, and to learn to pause and get off.
Yeah, I can relate. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. And when I was going through another really big spiritual awakening, actually people were like, something's changed with your voice. Like my vocal cords were almost spasming.
Wow.
So when I did the inner work, I was like, oh, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's my fight or flight response. And especially
Mhm.
because I'm so sensitive to other people's energy. I
Mhm.
was absorbing it more too. And like
Yeah.
I almost felt like if somebody could see right through me, it was like I felt very exposed and my
Yeah.
vocal cords were spasming.
Wow.
It wasn't as bad as Robert Kennedy's, but it was like it was
Yeah.
getting to that point. And once I acknowledged what it was and
Yeah.
did all the work that you just said, I rewired myself and my voice came back to normal. So
Amazing.
that's what it was. It's pretty
Yeah. And
sometimes,
it's real. Like,
yeah, and sometimes it happens, like it'll happen a little glitch of it, but
yeah.
it's mostly gone. And yeah, and I think most people have something like that in one
Hmm.
way or another, but they just think that it's a medical thing. They don't realize
Right.
that it's the inner work that they have to do.
Exactly. And what's interesting is modern medicine is acknowledging this more and more. And
Yeah,
like obviously we have skepticism, healthy skepticism of medical authorities and academic authorities. However, it's getting to the point where it's like this is so obvious. And you can look at the physical symptoms of it, but also just the anxiety, the levels of anxiety in the society and around the world, anxiety, depression, stress. It's of course it's related. How could it not be related? And I look back on my life and my primary symptom was eczema, and that started when I was 5 years old. Like this went back a long way, and it would come and go and come and go. And then about 5 years ago, I had a really, really stressful experience, and then came back and never went away until now. And it's actually starting to heal now. And most people have this. I went to a seminar over the summer. I don't know if you've heard of Brian Weiss.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
then I went
Yeah,
to a
I read his
seminar. I got
books.
to
Yeah.
go. Yeah, so I went in person. It was so cool. It was amazing. But he did this exercise with people, and it was talking to your symptoms. So it's kind of like a little guided meditation of trying to see what the symptoms might be trying to do for you. Like, why are you here? How are you helping me? And what was funny is that he asked, it was a room of 500 people. There were a lot of people there because he rarely does seminars, but he was like, does anyone not have a symptom? Like two people raised their hand in a room of 500. And then when he actually talked to them, it turned
I
out,
did.
no, yeah, you actually
Yeah.
do have a symptom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really widespread. And I would never just be like, well, if you have an illness, it's because you're stressed. Obviously, like that's ridiculous to say, but I think it factors into illness a lot more than people are aware of because I tried every possible cleanse and diet and alternative treatment you could imagine, and nothing worked. Like I was just to the point where I'm like, well, I'm just gonna get sicker and die young, I guess. Like this is just gonna keep progressing until I'm actually really, really ill, and there's nothing I can do about it until I found this program. And then I started realizing that we have this power, and maybe not for every single illness, but the thing. So what I'm doing is called the dynamic neural retraining system. I have to plug it because I love it so much. It's changed my life, but I'm like a mild case for what this program treats. It's curing people with autoimmune disease, with POTS. I didn't know what POTS was until I did this program. And it's horrifying, like fibromyalgia, the craziest illnesses, like bedridden, immobile, cannot live life. And people are coming back and hiking mountains after doing the program. And I want the reason I'm stressing it more is just to bring it back to like, we do have this power, we do have this agency. And it's not to say that if you do this program, every single health problem you have will be remedied and fixed, because I don't know that every single condition is linked to stress. However, I think it's just such a perfect example of what we really are capable of. And I don't need Robert Kennedy to help me with this. I can do this on my own, like I'll be okay, But I do think that's so important for people to hear about and recognize, because we're taught, I don't know if it's ever explicitly said, but so much of the messaging is you're too small to do this on your own. You need help. You need an expert. You need an authority outside yourself to be okay. And the
Sure.
long, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that like, people always give their outside power to healers. It's like, no,
yeah,
healers are actually accessing what you have inside of you,
right,
necessarily even need them
yeah,
to do this stuff.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah. And that's beautiful, and it's everywhere. And it's I something I want to do more going forward is just highlighting this of all the ways that people are, whether it's helping themselves or helping others. There's so much we can do without leading on the government. And I think a perfect example of this is during natural disasters. You see the FEMA response, you see the way the government handles these things, whether out of malice or just incompetence. But then you look at how people step up to help their fellow humans. Like this, maybe not every single person is like this, but there's enough people who feel a sense of duty to help their fellow humans in times of hardship. I think we could do this. I think we could do it on our own. And it might take some time and some adjustment and some building parallel structures and really coming up with efficient ways and infrastructure to help people. But I think we could. And I think it would be more efficient than the government doing it because we know about their track record with all of these things, which is the other thing. It's like, why do you keep going back to the poison well? It's not working. Sorry, I think a package is arriving.
Oh, no, I couldn't even hear anything. You're good. Well, I'm sure you saw in North Carolina the FEMA coming in a helicopter, and or maybe it was Red Cross. It was either Red Cross or FEMA. And people were gathering and doing their own donations and whatnot. And FEMA or the Red Cross showed up in a helicopter and blew everything away because they don't want people taking their power back. They know that we're waking up to this shit.
Yeah, exactly. You can't have that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then it falls away. It's like, you've probably seen V for Vendetta, the movie.
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, and like the chancellor is like, we need to make them remember why they need us. Yeah. And if people don't feel like they need them, well, they're out. Like, because so much of it it's just belief. Because like we were talking about, like government isn't real. The authority isn't real. This is all narratives and made up and imaginary, but enough people believe it that it's real. That's reality. But if people start to question that fundamentally, then it falls away because what do they have to rest on outside of their weapons and their guns, which, they might use them. But there's, to come back to Larkin Rose, there's a great speech, if anyone's interested, called So Small a Thing. He gave it at a convention or conference called Anarchapulco years ago. But he talks about how much the power of belief factors into this perception of authority and how changing people's minds actually is very powerful. Because if you can help these people who work for government see the nature of it, you don't have to fight them. You don't have to violently battle them. They'll just realize it and put down their weapons. And I know this sounds maybe overly optimistic, but philosophically, it's true. I highly encourage anyone to watch that speech.
You can't fight fire with fire,
Exactly.
I mean, I'm a very quick to react person, and there's a fiery side to me, and I've learned to cool that down because you really can't fight fire with fire. Exactly what you described is the only way to solve these problems. I think, when people ask what are your solutions, I mean, what you said is a broad general statement, but if that is always kept in mind with our solutions, then I think that we can actually get somewhere.
Yeah.
So
well, and I think just like to put it in perspective, like I feel like I think of how much time people spent this year on the election, whether it was watching the news or going out to vote or even doing activism for their favorite politician or just spending their time and energy on this. What if they directed that just as a fun little challenge to their communities? Like, what if they just went out and helped people and figured out what their community needed and found ways to do that instead of relying on people in Washington to do it for them or in at the capital city of, of your state? It's like, okay, if you want to keep doing that, okay, I'm past the point. I think it's violence. I think voting is violence, but like, if that's what you believe, man, okay, like this is what it is right now. But if you're going to do that, you better think of ways that you can do something in your community and actually change the world, because most people are voting of like, well, I don't know what to do. It's the lesser evil. So if you're voting with that in mind, I really hope you're considering other alternatives and looking into ways to make a change, because it's not enough to just say like, well, here, this evil politician is not as evil as the other politician. So that, and this, I know there's people who are very much cultists about it, and they genuinely believe that they are the savior. And I think there are some people who really believe that about Biden. I know people say they don't exist, but they exist. I'm from LA. They really thought Biden was like a good guy. He was doing a great job. Like, so, and for those people, it's like, I don't really try to get through to them anymore.
Well, they are still on the mainstream bandwagon, which seems like it's so 20 years ago. I mean, not even like 5 years ago. The mainstream alternative now is sort of the mainstream. It's like everything's shifting, but there's no getting through to them unless they just want to do the research on their own, put it out there, and then if they want to do it. But yeah, there's really no getting through this.
No, I've tried, and I think what's helped me in my work is that when I first started, I really thought like, well, I have to save the world. I have to single-handedly change everybody's mind, and that's silly. And I was young, and like, of course, that was never going to be the case. But I've shifted my intention now to just like, well, I kind of would like to reach people who can intuitively sense something is wrong, and they look around and they see things are really messed up, but they don't have a philosophical framework to look at it through, or maybe they don't have like the emotional framework to look at it through. So I kind of want to connect with people who have some sense that it's not really going great right now, and address them, because I think there's far more of them than there are people who really believe Donald Trump is going to save us, or that Kamala Harris or AOC, whoever's next step, is going to be the savior. Like I don't think those people are as numerous as it would be portrayed as in the media, or as it is portrayed in the media.
Well, you certainly present everything in a very digestible way. I would not want to get in a debate with you because I don't think I would win. No, well, you make everything so logical and so straight to the point that there's no arguing it. You know what I mean? Really, there's like, go look this up and check for yourself. You're not putting your woo-woo ideas in there. I mean, when you and I talk, you can, because I'm of that. But when you're putting your information out there, any average leftist who has completely opposing views, if they actually just listen to you, I mean, there's really no arguing with
I appreciate that. I try really hard. Like I really try to, when I'm writing my videos, I'm like, okay, but what's that demographic going to say about this? And then I try to just put in a little line of like, nope, we're not doing that. I'm shutting this down before you can comment it, and they'll comment it anyway. But I try to think of it. And I'm coming from, I was a liberal. Like I understand the reasoning here. And I think that's really valuable for me. Although what's funny is that I don't do very well with liberals. I do much better with right-wingers who then come toward anarchism. Yeah. I've had very little success with people on the left.
It's kind of the scale of awakening at this point, I think. I mean, not to label or categorize people, but being that you and I were in the liberal category for a certain period of time, and now we're where we are, we can kind of look back at our old selves and go, okay, my level of consciousness was very different then.
Yeah.
Now it's expanded and this is where I'm at. And you can kind of see the scale. So that's probably why you resonate more with right-leaning people.
Yeah, and I think too, like inherent to the right-wing ideology is at least a perception of being anti-government. I don't think most right-wingers actually are anti-government, but they think they are. On things that they want to be anti-government, of course. If they want government in another regard, that's not pro-government. It's a means to an end to get to anti-government or whatever. But I think because of that self-perception, it's what I'm saying is an easier jumping off point than for a liberal who thinks that government really is good and who thinks that FDR was the best president we ever had. That's a tough hill to climb, for an anarchist, against somebody who believes inherently that government is a virtue and that government serves the greater good. So it's definitely easier to relate to right-wingers. But then if you question, it's a sacred calf or cow? I always get that wrong. Sacred calf, right?
I think it's calf. Yeah.
Sacred calf, yeah.
I think.
You question that. I think so. Well, then you are a left-wing libtard who voted for Kamala Harris and you're just mad she didn't win. And you have TDS and you're like I don't think it counts as TDS if you have like legitimate issues, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. Well, and then, the closed-minded right people will automatically assume that you are liberal or somewhat left-leaning for having the right questions to ask about Trump. Right. And then if you are asking more surface level things, that's actually more of the left-leaning people. They tend to not dig super deep.
Right.
Well, let's close on this. What do you see happening over the next year to 4 years? I mean, I know it's hard to predict, and you're not really one to make big predictions, but I'm just curious as to what you see happening over the next year to 4 years.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what I'm hoping, what I think will happen, I want to start with the optimism. No, let's start with the pessimism first, actually. Let's end on the optimism. I think, unfortunately, and again, this is just intuitive. So like, I'm not claiming this is going to happen, but I have an unfortunate feeling that there probably will be a big event, and that's probably going to galvanize support for more authoritarianism and all of these things that the right was railing against that Biden was going to do, and the biometrics and the digital ID. I think that whatever happens, even if it's just incremental things of like this little catastrophe happens there and that one, or it's a big one, who knows? I don't know. But I think unfortunately that's probably going to get a lot of people who were skeptical when the Democrats were doing it, just begging for Daddy Trump to do it, and calling you a terrorist and a traitor if you don't like it and you don't want to be involved and you don't want it to happen. Unfortunately, I think that could happen. I hope it doesn't. Maybe it won't. I could be wrong. My predictions are crap. I thought Hillary Clinton was going to win for sure in 2016. So, don't.
I agree with you.
But yeah, but more positive. Well, also, I think economically it's going to be quite difficult. I don't think the tariffs and the continued spending are going to help, which is so funny because you see all these Trump supporters, including Elon Musk, like railing about spending and the national debt. I'm like, is anyone going to acknowledge that Trump added to this? That he kept.
Yeah, do you remember 2020?
Yeah, it's crazy. And then with the military funding, all of this, oh, he's anti-war and he's against the military-industrial complex. He signed every single funding bill for the military. And he's saying they're going to give Israel basically whatever they want. You think you're fighting the military-industrial complex? You're not. But anyway, that's another thing. I think the economy is going to be rough. But I think positively, one, I do think some Trump people are going to question it. Maybe not a lot, but at least some. And that's encouraging to me. And then the other thing is, I think that people on the left, especially given the messaging of just like, well, this is what happened. Forget that Trump's Hitler, you just vote in 4 years and then you can, get your power back. I do think that a lot of people on the left are maybe going to take more interest in helping their communities because they feel disempowered politically. And I may completely disagree with them ideologically. And in 2 to 4 years, I will be still making videos about how they're delusional and, confused and contradictory. But my hope is that because they, just as the right views themselves as anti-government, the left tends to view themselves more as charitable and caring for people in need. And I'm hoping that they use this loss with Trump in power as a good motivation to do more, like actually do more, not vote more, but do more to help others. I don't know if it'll happen, but that's my optimistic take, is that maybe, even if it's just out of an egoic defiance of Trump, the end result of helping others and building, new structures, new infrastructure and ways to help people, I'm hoping that happens as a byproduct.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, whatever anybody's political stance is in the United States, I think we can all agree that we need to take a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down approach. Yeah. I mean, if we can't all agree on that, then we're really screwed. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just something that's so fundamentally obvious at this point. So maybe that's a message that we can continue to put out there.
Yeah, I think we will.
Yes. Well, it's been so awesome finally getting to talk to you. I know we've sent messages back and forth and tweets and Instagram stuff over the past few years, but it's been really nice finally getting to talk to you. And please stay in touch.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for all your work. I love seeing other women. I love seeing anyone speaking out, but it's really cool to see other women because we're kind of few and far between.
It really is. We are few and far between. I mean, there's a lot in the right, the right leaning pod, but not so much in the more anarchist libertarian group. So we'll have to continue to make it grow because we need more of each other.
For sure.
All right. Well, I'll definitely stay in touch and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks.
All right. Bye.